Hey friends, Frustrated Worm here today with a rants video in regards to the Crucible. Nothing new, right? Um, yeah, I was gonna do a whole topic about some stuff, blah 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 today, but I was playing the Crucible earlier, and I had some good games, some fun games. I had some boring games, where we mercied enemies like within like a minute and a half of the game starting. And I had some really frustrating games. Now, let me precurse everything I'm about to say with this. I know my limits in the Crucible. I know that I am not a god tier player. Okay. I know that there are lots of players out there who are better than me and who will best me in the Crucible. This is not a smack talk on, loadouts or anything like that, but rather this is a discussion on, I guess, the RNG of Crucible matchmaking, number one, and number two, the very poor spawns that some Crucible maps have, because not all Crucible maps have bad spawns. So let's rewind just a little bit. Of course, we know that's much like earlier this year. I don't know if it was in Lightfall or if it was a little bit before Lightfall, but basically Bungie changed the spawns in the Crucible, and for the most part they were good. We actually made a whole video talking about, speaking high praises. We're like, hey, Bungie, y'all did good here, this is a great change, we're so happy. And then we did another video saying, actually, we changed our mind, the spawns were terrible, blah blah blah. But we have now been playing with these spawns for however many months now at this point, and I think that the good and the bad and the ugly are all starting to show their heads, right? Now, most maps in the game have really, really nice spawn reworks, okay? And when I say most maps, I mean most maps, which include maps that are triangular in shape or otherwise, circular, the non-linear maps. And really, it's the linear maps that I do have issues with. Okay, take for example, Wormhaven is one of those. Convergence is one of those. Let's see, what's another linear map that I can think of off the top of my head? Those are the only two I can think of off the top of my head. It was mainly, Wormhaven, because I don't know why, but for some reason today I played Wormhaven like 50 times, it felt like. And again, we would have the games where we would smash the enemy team and it was very boring, or it would be the opposite and we would get smashed. And on Wormhaven, there was no in between. There was no, oh wow, that was a really good game, we just barely lost, or we just barely won, like we really had to fight for it. No. It was either stomped or get stomped. And I started looking at, okay, like, what are the reasons why? And the reasons are the spawns, okay? And we're going to talk about the spawns first, because I think the spawn is kind of the biggest issue with the Crucible currently. And like I said, we've talked about this in a video before, but we're going to talk about it again because it still ain't fixed, and we have a little bit better idea of exactly what we're talking about here, because we're specifically talking about, like I said, linear maps. Now, linear maps like Wormhaven, what happens... Oh gosh, I wish I had a art thing on my computer so I could show y'all. But what happens when you have a linear map, right? You've got three lanes, right? Let's take, for example, that's not gonna work. I'm not gonna be able to do that backwards, but there's three lanes, right? You have your lane on Wormhaven that goes outside. You have the lane that goes up, upstairs and through the middle. And then you have your inside lane, right? And the maps are mostly even on both sides. There's no major differences. I know there's some differences, but for the most part, Wormhaven is a fairly balanced map on both sides. But the issue that happens is once a team caps the B flag, their spawns move from behind, like say C, right? They move from behind their home flag up to between C and B, while the other team, oh wow, that snipe was pretty crispy, sorry. While the other team is still spawning back behind their home flag, right? So what ends up happening is, if the enemy team decides, hey, you know what, 5 of us are going to push the B flag while one person stays and caps the home flag, which, by the way, if you are watching this and you are playing on a linear map, a 3-lane map, something like that, you should always go to B first. Don't dilly-dally around the A flag for extra super, like, no. Go to B, because of what I just said. Once your team caps B, if you die, you're more than likely not going to spawn back past your home flag. You're more than likely going to spawn between your home flag and the B flag, right? Not only that, but it's actually like you spawn very close to the B flag. You spawn closer to the B flag than you do your home flag. So what ends up happening in these games is, on Wormhaven, for example, had a game I did fantastic on. It was a great personal game, but we lost by like a landslide. Why? Because I would kill 3 enemies, start advancing. By the time I got like halfway in between B and you know, my home flag, they would already be there because they're spawning, you know, like basically 20 meters back, while my team is spawning, you know, 40, 50 meters back, you know, from the B flag. And I don't know actually how long it is. It's probably further than that, but that's kind of the issue. And like I said, this is only an issue on maps that are linear in shape. Bannerfall could be an example of another one, but Bannerfall is not quite as bad because of the like kind of the layouts of the maps. But like I said, Wormhaven, Convergence, these are very, very difficult maps. And not only that, but I don't know if Bungie changed the weights of like when to flip spawns, but I was struggling playing Wormhaven because, you know, first of all, we're down a guy. It was 5 on my team, 6 on the enemy team. Like not a fun situation to start out in. But what ends up happening is I would get killed halfway between B and C. I would spawn behind C. Well, then I would run up and I would have to kill enemies that are literally standing right on the other side of B, like maybe like, you know, 10, 15 meters from B. And at one point during a game, the enemy team moved up, started capping our C flag, and instead of flipping us to A, it spawned us all in one massive group right there back behind C. And I think that is a major issue. And this is, you know, I'm not sure why Bungie changed it like this. Okay, because to me it's poor design. You know, used to we didn't have to deal with that. And actually we're also going to talk about why the Crucible is in kind of the state that it's in, but we'll get to that in a second. But yeah, it's frustrating, and I think that Bungie needs to look at, the main thing is reweighing the spawns on these linear maps, right? Like if you are, I'm not against spawn trapping. Okay, mind you, I'm not against a good team of 6, for example, getting a team of randoms spawn trapped. That's not what I'm saying, because I think that that's okay to a degree. But when the enemy team is literally like in your like around your C flag, like hovering on your C flag, and you're still spawning back there, that's when we have issues. So that's where the change really needs to happen. It's just as soon as the game registers, hey, like we've got, you know, there's 3 or 4 enemies up right next to their business here, let's start pushing them on the opposite side, because that's how Destiny used to work. Like if you were even remotely too aggressive, they'd start spawning behind you. And then of course games flip that way, because, you know, now your team is split and your team's going to get pinched from 2 sides. You know, you've got the people who are still alive on C flag, and then the people who just spawn A flag coming in behind you. You're going to get shot from, you know, from both sides. And that's why in the past, these linear maps had pretty decent spawns. I'm not going to say they're perfect, but they were better than they are now. But with that being said, like, you know, all the other maps, you know, have decent spawns. You know, maps that are non-linear, Fragment, for example, is fantastic, you know, because there's breathing room for spawns. Like, okay, like if we get A and B, you know, and the enemy flanks around to our A, we'll probably start spawning C, or you know, vice versa. And, you know, just kind of use your spawns. Next thing you know, you're spawning on B, then you're spawning on C, then you're spawning on A. But on these linear maps, doesn't do that. Now, the next bit of, I guess you'd say, like, frustration, and this is, I don't really know, like I said, I just need to kind of rant about it, is matchmaking. And I don't know what parameters Bungie uses to matchmake, but what it feels like in many instances is it takes the like best player in the lobby and puts them with the 5 worst players in the lobby. And then there's like a, you know, all the medium tier players on an enemy team, or, you know, all the higher tier players and medium tier players are on the enemy team. And like I said, I don't really know, but this is what it feels like. This happens all the time. Like, I feel like since I've been playing this season, you know, and since the matchmaking changes, really, I'm encountering more and more mercies. And let's be very clear, mercies are not fun. You know, we've said this before on the channel. I will say it again. Mercies are not fun. They're not entertaining. It's not fun to, you know, stomp another team so bad that the game ends in a minute and a half. Then you have to go back into orbit for, you know, 3 minutes waiting on another match. Like, that's not entertaining to me. I'm sure it's probably entertaining to some, not to me though. Right. And I think that, you know, to the enemy team that's getting spawn trapped, that's not entertaining either, you know. But with that being said, the whole, you know, matchmaking parameters, I think that Bungie just needs to weigh it slightly differently so that you have, you know, your good players matched with some of your medium players, matched with some of your low players, right? Not your, you know, top tier player match with a bunch of low tier players, because that's what ends up happening. Like I don't take screenshots of my in games, but for example, we had a game last night where we got 40 kills, or 40 or 41, something like that, 40 or 41 kills, and we had like a 5 something KD. Like, it was a very, very good personal game. But then you look, the next person on my team had like a 1.2, and then everybody else was negative. And it's like, okay, like that's, you know, it happens. It's bound to happen at some point, right? But when that happens regularly, you know, I'm regularly dropping 30 bombs, getting 3+ KDs, you know, and my team is getting negative KDs with no caps on flags or anything like that. That's when I'm like, okay, like this is odd. And especially, like, I think when you look at in-game screens, and maybe I should start doing this, maybe I should start, you know, screenshotting every in-game screen just for some data collection. You will see there's a major like discrepancy in my lobbies, at least, which I know they're also location based. But in my lobbies, you know, you will have an enemy team, you know, where the top person has a 4+ KD, then the next person has like a 2+ KD, then everybody else has at least a 1+ KD. Then you'll flip over to my team, I'll have whatever KD. Typically it's on the higher end just because the playstyle I use is very difficult to counter for some players for some reason. But I will have a higher KD, but then you look and like everybody, like the bottom 3 will have like less than 1 KDs, you know. And I'm not saying that, you know, oh, these players don't need to be here, because, you know, I was there at 1.2. I just started playing. Like, I don't care if you have a low KD, like that's how you get better. Getting low KDs is how you practice. But Bungie, stop balancing games with so many players who have I'm sorry, I like to watch my own footage while I talk. But Bungie, like, stop balancing players. You know, if you got, you know, 3 people who are very, very, you know, least skilled, maybe put, you know, the one who's the best, so to speak, of the 3 low skill players on one team, and then the 2 others, blah blah blah. And you know, this, like I said, this wouldn't be an issue if it was once in a blue moon, you know, because everybody has bad games. I have games where I don't even go positive. Like, I will be the first to admit it. You know, I had some yesterday where I was not feeling it. I was not on point, blah blah blah, whatever you want to say. But that's it's becomes a issue whenever you notice that every single game. It's like, God, matchmaking. And I know I'm not the first person to talk about this. Like, I know that there's been plenty of conversation on forums and media and stuff like that about people complaining about their teammates. And really, I don't think it's teammates. Like, I would never blame teammates for a loss that we have, right? If we lose, it is because the enemy team had a stronger map advantage. You know, they capped B flag first. Or if we lose, it's because the enemy team had better players. It's not, oh, we lost because my team sucked. Like, no, that does not happen. I don't blame my team, right? But I like to win. I prioritize winning over having a high KD. You know, I try to win. If the high KD comes with it, fantastic. But I prioritize winning, right? But it's very difficult when you have players who are either playing for KD and they don't cap flags, which, again, like, everybody gets to play their own way. I'm not saying don't do that or anything like that. You know, play how you want to play. It's Destiny. If you want to use Lemon Arc and everybody hates you, that's fine. Use Lemon Arc and let people hate you. Like, I think it's hilarious. I love you, Lemon Arc, but this is not a Lemon Arc video. But, you know, I just think that the changes should be put in place so that it's less likely for players to get either stomped or for players to stomp. Like games in the past, like old, you know, take 2 years ago, for example. 2 years ago, Crucible games were so much fun, right? Like, you had games where you would slay out, you had games where you'd get smashed, but your average game was fun. Like, everybody in your lobby was about the same skill, blah blah blah. And then, you know, Bungie went and made some changes, and that's the last thing we're about to talk about. And just really threw the whole balance off. But yeah, I just think some sort of matchmaking changes just need to happen so that lobby balancing is better. You know, that way you don't have stacks of really, really good players against stacks of, you know, not so good players. And like I said, I know that everybody has good and bad games. Like, you could be, you know, if you're in one of these games, for example, and you're at the bottom, and you know, you want to go in the comments and be like, look, that's not me. Like, I get it. Okay, trust me, I get it. I have bad games too. I have games, like I said, where I am at the bottom of the board with a 0.6 KD. I'm okay with admitting it, you know, because not everybody's perfect. But when I'm seeing it happen literally like probably once every 3 games, there's a mercy. That's when it becomes an issue, right? But yeah, we're gonna stop talking about the matchmaking, and we're gonna move into the last thing, and that's um Bungie really screwed up the Crucible a long time ago, and it's never recovered, and it will never recover again. So years ago, Destiny 2, the Crucible was great. In my opinion, it was very balanced. You didn't have stomps, you didn't have a bunch of mercies, stuff like that. Like your average control playlist, you know, this is excluding Trials, because obviously Trials is a different game, so to speak. You know, but your average game was really fun. You know, players would get in there, you'd fight till the end, blah, 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 you know, and go on. Bungie made the mistake, I think it was with Witch Queen. Correct me if I'm wrong on that. But I think it was with Witch Queen, they added skill-based matchmaking in. And when they added skill-based matchmaking in, that was the death sentence for Crucible, in my opinion. Okay, because what ended up happening is, number one, I mean, obviously the fun factor was gone. Like, you couldn't just go in there with like Rat King and a sniper and whoa, I want to have some fun. You know, you had to put on a try-hard loadout. You had to use a meta loadout because everybody else is going to be sweating their asses off. And I'm sure that the new lights probably had a lot of fun, because the new lights are playing with a bunch of new lights that don't know what's going on, and everybody's just using whatever they want. But at the higher tier, like at the higher tier lobbies, or even probably I would say the average slash above average tier lobbies, it was, you had to put on the best you got, because your enemy is going to be bringing it. They're going to be bringing the heat. So what ended up happening is players would join in a game. They'd say, oh, this isn't fun. This is sweaty, blah, blah, blah. And they'd leave. Okay. So you'd have, and it was literally like a crisis. You couldn't play the Crucible because you'd get in a game, and the second like your team started taking a turn, 3 or 4 people just leave. You know, they just leave, and then you feel forced to leave because it's not going to bring him back for another, like, you know, 3 minutes or something like that. If it does even bring him back or put somebody in, you know, so then it's like, well, what's the point of me staying? And it's still, you know, well, we'll talk about that in a second, but what's the point of staying, right? What's the point of staying in a game where it's, you know, 3v6 and they have the advantage? Like, it's not going to be a fun game. It's not going to be a fun situation. So then everybody ends up leaving. You know, I leave games. Like, I'm not, like I said, I'll be straight with y'all. Like, I leave games. Like, if I'm down and it's, you know, 4v6, 3v6, I'll leave a game, you know, because what's the point? It's not going to be fun to get team shot in every single situation, you know. But Bungie did that. All of a sudden people started leaving in droves. And so Bungie tried to correct it by, okay, we're going to hand out bans. If you leave games, if you leave just a regular 6v6 casual game mode, you're getting a ban, right? You're getting a 30-minute ban, and then it goes up from there. It's like 30, an hour, a day, blah, 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 whatever it is. And it did not deter players at all. In fact, what it did is it just pushed players away from PvP, right? And I remember, you know, going into matchmaking, it was miserable because I would literally, like, if I got into a game where, you know, it was 2v6, I just put my controller down and I would open up, you know, Google or something like that and mess around in something else, you know, moving my controller every now and then, but I wouldn't even engage with the game. I'd just sit there and be idle. And yeah, my KD suffered because of it, but I don't want to play in a game where I'm literally going to lose every single engagement, right? Like, it's not fun. It's not entertaining. And it's especially not fun if there's not a prospect of potentially winning, you know, and that's a huge factor for me, is the potential to win. And maybe if Bungie made some change where, like, you know, hey, your team is now at a deficit, you know, it's 6v3, so every point you score counts as double or even triple points, maybe then I'd be like, okay, we're going to stay and fight it out. Because every time they kill me, they get 2 points because of their, you know, their whatever, you know, the 2 flags they have. But every kill I get 3 or even 4 points. That would feel much, much better. It you know, sorry, went on a little tangent there. But yeah, it's they did that. They started handing out bans. Well, then they realized, oh crap, like, that's not the way to do it, because people were still leaving. You know, people would still just, you know what? I'm done. I'll go play another game. I'll go play PvE. I'll go do another game, something like that. And like, you saw a drop in the amount of Crucible players. So Bungie said, okay, we got to take that back. So they pulled it back. No more bans in control playlists, but the damage was done. Players had already, you know, had that taste of, I'm just going to leave. They had that mindset. I'm just going to leave. I'm not doing well. And lo and behold, you get to this day, if something's not going well, you will see people just leave. You know, and rage quitting has always been a thing. I'm not saying it hasn't always been a thing, but it is so much more prevalent now than it has ever been in Destiny before. And it's because Bungie wanted to, I don't really know what idea they had in mind with the whole idea of skill-based matchmaking. I really don't, because I think that, well, I know why they did it. I take that back. I know why they did it, you know, for new lights, blah blah blah. But it's mind-boggling to me. But they killed PvP when they made that change, because now, like I said, like even today, you know, you're getting in games, 2 or 3 people leave. I'll just leave too. I'm not gonna get a ban. I would rather me leave and the whole team leave, just give the enemy team a free win, because they would have got it anyways, and get into another game. But yeah, that's my rant. That's my Thursday rant for you. I want to hear your thoughts on it though. Of course, let me know your thoughts on linear maps. Like, do you think Bungie needs to reweigh the spawns? Because that's a major issue. You know, the enemy team should not be able to cap my home flag, and I'm still spawning behind my home flag while they're capping it, and, you know, blah, 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 whatever. Let me know your thoughts on that. Of course, let me know your thoughts on matchmaking. Are you struggling with matchmaking like I am, or do you find it pretty fair and balanced for the most part? And like I said, keep out the opinions of, hey, like, you know, like, well, it's okay because it doesn't happen very often, because, you know, every player's experience is different. For me, I encounter so many games where I feel like I'm stacked against, you know, and I do have games where I get put with all the stacked players, so to speak. You know, I'll get in there and you know, absolutely destroy an enemy team. But I want to know your thoughts on that. And of course, when Bungie killed PvP by adding skill-based matchmaking, what do you think about that? Like, do you agree with that? Do you think they killed it beforehand? Which some of you will probably say they killed it when they made it free to play. I would probably agree with you on that as well. But yeah, that's it for me. I've been rambling for 20 something minutes. So like the video if you enjoyed it, subscribe for more daily Destiny content, and of course, watch the video that you see on the end screen, because for whatever reason, YouTube thinks you will like it, and I will catch y'all in the next one. Bye for now.